I support this rule and look forward to continue to work with him as we move forward on this bill. And let's have a good, hearty debate and adopt some amendments to correct it. Thank you very much. Yield back.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the bills that will receive consideration under this open rule is H.R. 5973, which primarily funds agriculture and nutrition programs. The legislation contains discretionary funding as well as required mandatory funding for food and nutrition programs within the Department of Agriculture. This includes funding for the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC, the Food Stamp or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, and the Child Nutrition Programs. The bill provides $6.9 billion discretionary funding for WIC, which, contrary to what liberals suggest, is $303.5 million above last year's level. This program provides supplemental nutritional foods needed by pregnant nursing mothers, babies, and young children. Language is included for oversight and monitoring requirements to ensure the proper use of taxpayer dollars, as well as food price tracking to ensure necessary resources continue serving those eligible for program benefits. The bill provides for $19.7 billion in required mandatory funding outside the discretionary funding jurisdiction of the Appropriations Committee for child nutrition programs, which is $1.5 billion above last year's level. The bill provides for $80 billion in required mandatory spending, again, outside of the discretionary funding jurisdiction of the Appropriations Committee for SNAP, the food stamp program. This is $408 million below last year's level. Since food stamp or SNAP spending is driven by program participation, the spending is called mandatory. This legislation also includes new stringent reporting requirements to help weed out and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse in the program, such as a requirement for states to include the fraud hotline number on all EBT cards, a directive that the Secretary of Agriculture ban fraudulent vendors, and a requirement for states to share data with enforcement agencies. The legislation includes $996 million for food safety and inspection programs, which is equal to the President's budget request and a decrease of $9 million below last year's level. These mandatory inspection activities, which play a significant role in maintaining the safety and productivity of the country's 832 billion meat and poultry industry, help maintain critical meat, poultry, and egg product inspection and testing activities and support the implementation of a poultry inspection program to improve safety and inspection efficiency. This voluntary inspection program is expected to reduce government costs by $85 to $95 million over 3 years and reduce costs to private businesses by a total of $250 million. The FDA receives a total of almost $2.5 billion in discretionary funding in the bill, representing a 0.7% or $16.3 million reduction below last year's level. Total funding for the FDA, including user fee, is $3.8 billion. These are just some of the priorities outlined in the underlying legislation. I look forward to hearing from committee leaders who will provide further discussion of the various elements of the legislation at the time the bill is debated. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, before I yield to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, I just want to yield myself such time as I may consume. Just to make a point here, I think it's important for us not to try to fool anybody by saying that we are adequately living up to the challenge to combating hunger and food insecurity in this country, because I will say to the gentlelady that there are 49 million Americans who would disagree with you. There are 49 million Americans who are hungry in our country, the richest country on the planet. 17 million of them are children. Among the many things that are cut in this agriculture appropriations bill is the commodity supplemental food program. The cut in that alone is going to throw 55,000 seniors off of food assistance. So, you know, we can talk about that we're trying to do the best we can, but let's not say that somehow we're doing something we're not. We are not meeting the challenge of ending hunger and food insecurity in America, not by a long shot. And that's one of the frustrating things about this appropriations process, is that the very programs to help people get out of poverty, to get on their feet again, are being slashed. You are balancing the budget on the backs of hungry people while you ask Donald Trump not to pay 1 penny more in taxes. I think that's unfair. And that's why I think this whole process is unfair. At this point, I'd like to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the rule and the underlying agricultural FDA appropriations bill. It does not meet our responsibilities to the American people. This bill's allocation is $1.7 billion below the President's request. The lower allocation represents a breaking of the bipartisan agreement we made last August. It will have a dramatic impact on the fundamental American priorities embedded in this bill, especially in the critical areas of financial protection, nutrition, food safety, and anti-hunger programs. I would like to submit this letter from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops for the record, a letter that speaks out against the inadequate funding for nutrition and anti-hunger programs in this appropriations bill. Nearly half of the babies born in the United States every year participate in the Women, Infant, and Children's Feeding Program. It is a short-term intervention that can help provide a lifetime of good nutrition and health behaviors. And yet, at a time of great need, the bill underfunds WIC by $119 million. The Food and Drug Administration, a cornerstone of our food and product safety system, this bill rescinds $47.7 million in previous funding. This places the agency's vital mission, protecting the health of Americans, at risk. The bill cuts the Food for Peace program. Because of this cut, at least 6.6 million fewer hungry people around the globe will be fed. Already 300 children perish every hour of every day because of hunger and related causes. Ronald Reagan correctly called Food for Peace, and I quote, an instrument of American compassion, and we should support it. We know for a fact that the risky behavior in derivatives markets that precipitated the 2008 financial meltdown is still happening. We've seen it with MF Global and JP Morgan. Americans want more accountability from Wall Street and less speculation erratically driving up oil prices. And yet, this bill funds the Commodity Futures Trading Commission at $25 million less than 2012 and a full $128 million, 41%. This is quite simply setting the Commission up for failure. We have a lot of work to do to fix this bill. We must ensure that the fundamental priorities of the people that we represent, like preserving fair markets, improving nutrition, ensuring food and consumer safety, are upheld. I urge my colleagues to oppose this rule. I might add, in the state of Connecticut, in the 3rd Congressional District, 1 out of 7 individuals is food insecure. What does food insecurity mean? It means they don't know where their next meal is coming from. We have 49 million people in this country.
I yield an additional 1 minute.
We have 49 million people in this nation who are going to bed hungry every night in the richest country in the world. It is inconceivable that we would cut back on food and nutrition programs when the nation is suffering from the most serious economic recession that it is having, and that we would cut back on food stamps, we cut back on school breakfast programs, school lunch programs, the emergency food assistance program, the commodity supplemental food program, and while the richest people in this nation are having 3 squares a day or better. Let's get our priorities straight. Let's focus on the people that we represent, that we've come here to represent. Oppose this rule and oppose this bill. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other bill that will benefit from consideration under this open rule is H.R. 5972, which provides funding aimed at supporting a vibrant and safe transportation infrastructure while making the difficult decisions needed to balance the budget. The bill includes $17.6 billion discretionary appropriations for the Department of Transportation for fiscal year 2013. This is $69 million below last year's level. The bill designates $39.1 billion from the Highway Trust Fund for the Federal Highway Program, which is the same level provided last year. However, the committee recognizes that since the Highway Program still requires reauthorization and the funding level provided in the bill may change upon the enactment of a highway authorization bill for the next fiscal year, the Appropriations Committee is prepared to support a differing Highway Trust Fund spending level should a new multi-year authorization bill be enacted. Included in the legislation is $12.6 billion for the Federal Aviation Administration, which is $91 million above last year's level. The bill provides nearly $1 billion for the FAA's Next Generation Air Transportation System, otherwise known as NextGen, allowing the FAA to move forward with the next step in modernizing the nation's air control and airport system. The bill also supports operations and staffing, which will help ease congestion and reduce delays for travelers in U.S. airspace, while rejecting the administration's proposals for new aviation fees. The legislation contains funding for the various transportation safety programs and agencies within the Department of Transportation. This includes $776 million in both mandatory and discretionary funding for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, representing a reduction of $23.8 million below last year, $551 million for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, representing a reduction of $2.6 million below last year, and $177 million for the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is $4 million above last year's level. The legislation includes a total of $33.6 billion for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is $3.8 billion below last year's level. The bill wastes no funding on any new unauthorized quote, sustainable, end quote, livable or green community development programs. $26.3 billion is included in the bill for public and Indian housing, representing an increase of $759 million above last year's level. Within this total, the bill provides funding to renew benefits for every single individual and family currently receiving assistance and ensures that no critical benefits are eliminated or canceled. The bill also fully funds the President's request for veterans housing at $75 million and Native American block grants at $650 million. Housing programs within the bill are funded at $9.3 billion, representing a reduction of $361 million below last year's level and $49 million below the request. Within this total, the bill provides sufficient funding for the most vulnerable populations, including $165 million for housing for the disabled, an increase of $15 million over last year, and $425 million for housing of the elderly, again, an increase of $50 million above last year. These are just some of the priorities outlined in the underlying legislation. Again, I look forward to hearing from committee leaders who will provide further discussion of the various elements of the legislation. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
General Lady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, this rule allows members to go home to their districts, even if we don't address the doubling of student loan interest rates that's about to hit people across the country, and even if we don't hammer out a deal to fund our transportation programs and create jobs, notwithstanding the fact that our infrastructure is crumbling. If we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to say that the House cannot adjourn at the end of this week until we finish our business. And to discuss this amendment, I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Larson.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to oppose the rule because we are set to adjourn this week without finishing critical work on transportation. We need a long-term surface transportation bill that puts Americans back to work. Mr. Speaker, this House only builds roads in order to find cans to kick down those roads. We cannot have a big league economy with little league infrastructure in this country. We need a long-term investment to repair our roads, bridges, and highways and to maintain our transit systems. Leaders of our country have always recognized this fact. 3 years after Lewis and Clark left for the West, President Jefferson secured funding for the Cumberland Road. If Jefferson recognized the importance that transportation can have in linking this country, uniting the states in a shared economy and trade, surely we can show that same recognition today by staying here to ensure that the work of job creation is done. The question before us is whether this body recognizes that transportation projects create jobs and set the stage for economic growth. A bipartisan bill passed out of the Senate. It was forged out of compromise. It is a bipartisan solution. It means immediate job creation. It means jobs for private sector contractors, laborers, and engineers. A conference committee is meeting right now to bring us a long-term authorization to create real jobs. We should not adjourn without a long-term, robust, and bipartisan investment in transportation and jobs. And I urge my colleagues to vote against this rule so we can finish this work. With that, I yield back my time.
Gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, my colleagues are talking about the fact that we are going to have a district work period next week. The district work period is because next week we are celebrating the signing of the Declaration of Independence, one of the most important holidays in this country. Our colleagues across the aisle want to create more dependence in this country. They are as far away from the founders of this country as you can be in terms of what makes this country unique and what makes it so great. We don't need more dependence in this country, Mr. Speaker. We need to celebrate what makes this country great, what makes us unique. It's the independence of this country and the independence of citizens and their ability to take care of themselves and personally to take care of each other and not continue to look to the nanny state that our friends would create and have tried to create over the years. These are very difficult times, Mr. Speaker. We all know that. But it's important that the American people understand that House Republicans have repeatedly worked to find common ground with the President and Senate Democrats and have passed several bipartisan bills that would improve this economy, which has been so damaged by the policies of the left and this President. Several proposals supported even by the President have passed the House and been signed into law, including trade pacts, a bipartisan veterans hiring bill, a repeal of the IRS withholding taxes on job creators. But the President's own Job Council has embraced many of the job proposals advocated by Republicans, but ignored by the President himself. The simple truth is that President Obama's attempt, supported by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle and by them only, to stimulate the economy by growing government has failed. But you don't have to take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. Just look at the facts. The recent jobs report showed that the U.S. gained only 69,000 jobs in the month of May. May marked the 40th consecutive month that the unemployment rate has remained above 8%, repudiating the administration's pledge that unemployment would remain below 8% if the Democrat 2009 stimulus plan became law. Lest we forget, it was the Obama administration which claimed unemployment would be below 6% today if the $1.178 trillion Democrat stimulus was signed into law. At the current rate of job growth, if the United States continues to struggle under the failed policies that have produced the Obama economy and adds only 69,000 jobs each month in the future, it would take a total of 10 years and 5 months until June 2018 to regain all the jobs lost during the latest recession, which is longer than the 8 years it took to regain the jobs lost during the Great Depression. But even these figures, Mr. Speaker, hide the fact that the rate of underemployment or real unemployment, which counts those who want to work but have stopped searching in this economy and those who are forced to work part-time because they cannot find full employment, is 14.5% or higher. Also troubling is the realization that since 2008, which is the year President Obama was elected, median family income has declined by $1,154, falling to its lowest level since 1996. As of March 2012, the number of Americans receiving food stamps was 46.4 million, which is the third most in any month in history and up 80,000 from February. Today, 15% of Americans receive food stamps, representing an increase of 45% since President Obama took office. Mr. Speaker, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to continue the failed policies they began in 2007 and instituted for 4 years and worked with President Obama for 2 years on. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, House Republicans are working to improve the dismal conditions imposed by the liberal regime that dominated Washington, D.C. for far too long. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me just say, I hope that the gentlelady wasn't implying that somehow the federal government doesn't have a role in investing in our national highway infrastructure. Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, I should remind the gentlelady, understood the importance of having a national highway program. And as has been pointed out by a number of our speakers on the Democratic side, our infrastructure is aging and is falling apart, and we're not going to be able to compete in this global economy unless we make the proper investments. And by making the proper investments, we are not only helping our economy, we are putting people back to work. We are putting people back to work. And yet, the Republican leadership of this House is holding hostage a transportation bill that passed the Senate that would put countless people back to work, that passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, 74 votes, overwhelmingly in the Senate. We can't get that brought up on the House floor for a vote. The Republicans, I would say, Mr. Speaker, I think are intentionally running out the clock. I think it's a cynical attempt to hold everything up, to not invest in our economy, to slow down economic growth. Hopefully, I think in their minds, I think they hope that it will win them the election. I think it's a cynical way to do politics. We ought to be on this floor helping the American people. And yes, the 4th of July is a great time for us to celebrate, our country, but a lot of Americans are not going to celebrate because they're out of work. And we have the ability to put them back to work, and yet you, my friends on the other side of the aisle, are holding hostage the very bill that could put countless Americans back to work. At this time, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Gentleman from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, unless Congress acts in the next 4 days, the subsidized Stafford student loan interest rate is going to double from 3.4% to 6.8%. Despite the fact that that looming deadline, which affects over 7 million college students all across America, is staring us at the face, what we are debating here today is a rule which allows the House to go into recess for the 10th week since January, which is part of this rule. The good news is that a couple hours ago it was reported that the Senate and Republican leadership have actually agreed upon a settlement of this issue, which would allow the 3.4% rate to be extended for 1 year. But I would note that Mitch McConnell, who's the minority leader for the Republican Party, said that, quote, final approval of the student loan legislation really depends on House Republicans. I mean, the fact of the matter is we have no idea whether or not the House Republican leadership is going to agree to this compromise, which the Senate leadership reached a few hours ago, because all we're debating here today is another adjournment or recess motion before the House. The fact of the matter is it is time for us to focus on this issue, which the President on January 25th challenged Congress to act on. I started this countdown chart at day 110. We are now down to the final hours before the interest rates, which will cost thousands of dollars of more interest costs to college students across America unless we act. And the fact of the matter is that the House Republican bill that they rushed to the floor without a subcommittee hearing, without a markup, was completely rejected by Republicans in the Senate. We now have the glimmer of a deal, a compromise. We should not be debating another adjournment resolution for the 10th week of recess this year until we get this work done. There are millions of college students all across America who are waiting for us to get this issue resolved so that they can plan their budget for the next fall semester. And the fact that we're here again with another adjournment resolution with the most unproductive Congress in recent memory is ridiculous, and we should reject this rule. Let's focus on getting the work done that the American people are counting on. I yield back.
Time has expired. The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I need to remind my colleague across the aisle we're not debating an adjournment resolution here today. And I also need to remind my colleague across the aisle that it was the Democrats that set this student loan problem up. They made promises in 2006 to the American people they couldn't keep, and so they set up a time bomb, actually, so that the interest rates on the student loans would go back up because, again, they made promises they couldn't keep about lowering the rate of interest. And it affects a very small number of students, and it only affects them when they graduate from college, Mr. Speaker. And if the Obama economy weren't so lousy and only 50% of the students graduating were getting jobs, it really wouldn't be that big an issue because it's a very small amount of money to the students. And if they had jobs, they wouldn't be quite so concerned about it. They only have to pay those loans back after they graduate because we're subsidizing interest while they're in school. So I think our colleagues don't really want to go in that direction and talk about blaming Republicans for this mess with student loans since they created it. And if the students were getting jobs, most of them wouldn't be as concerned about it as they are now. They also, on the transportation bill that our colleagues tout so well, again, it fits right into their philosophy of borrow, 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 spend, spend, spend. It is not a responsible bill because the Republican bill would stay within the limits of the revenue that we get from the Highway Trust Fund, but they just want to borrow from the general fund and make our situation worse. Mr. Speaker, it seems clear to everyone except the liberal elites that job creators are being bogged down by overly burdensome federal regulations that prevent job creation, hinder economic growth. These regulations are particularly damaging for the real job creators in the country, small business owners. The federal government may create jobs, but they are not sustainable jobs and they are a drag on the economy. However, House Republicans recognize the need to remove onerous, redundant federal regulations that are so harmful to small businesses and impede private sector investment and job creation. In order to ease the regulatory burden on the economy and to promote job creation, House Republicans have worked to advance legislation to rein in the unaccountable federal regulatory apparatus and continue to pursue innovative initiatives such as my bill, H.R. 373, the Unfunded Mandates Information and Transparency Act, which would help improve transparency and accountability by disclosing costs of federal mandates that would otherwise remain hidden from public scrutiny. House Republicans appreciate that America's tax code has grown overly complicated and cumbersome, filled with loopholes and giveaways, and is fundamentally unfair. That's why the House Republican Plan for America's Job Creators recognizes the need to eliminate the special interest tax breaks that litter the tax code and reduce our overall tax rate to no more than 25% for business and individuals, including small business owners. This would make the tax code flatter, fairer, and simpler. Common sense changes tax code would ensure that everyone pays his or her fair share, lessens the burden on families, generates economic expansion, and creates jobs by making Americans more competitive. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Davis.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise to urge a no vote on the previous question so that an amendment to the rule can be offered. You know, Mr. Speaker, we just heard about what makes this country great. Well, I think what makes this country great is the education of our people. We know that having a good education is key to achieving the American dream and key to keeping our country competitive. And we all know that, because the folks in this chamber know the importance of a college education. Most people here have gone to college. But there are millions of young adults who are slowly seeing that opportunity evaporate with tuition skyrocketing. Students from across my district in San Diego are struggling, and they tell me that every day. Some of them are doing a delicate balancing act of providing for their families while taking on a full academic course load. And others, quite frankly, are just scraping by each semester. An additional burden of $1,000 in interest payments is no trifling matter for these students. And yet, we see that partisan games have led to gridlock on this issue. College students know that if they miss deadlines, there are consequences. And for Congress, there should be consequences too. Well, Mr. Speaker, the clock is running out. And I urge my colleagues, please support a solution that gives students and families the relief that they desperately need. I yield back.
Lady's time has expired. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll reserve balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized. Without objection, it is ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my friend for yielding. I think most Americans would agree, irrespective of which party they're in, that it would be a good idea to put Americans back to work building our highways and our bridges and our transportation systems, and do it now. I think most Americans would agree that doubling interest rates on student loans would be disastrous for people struggling to get a college education. I think most Americans would agree that if the other body passed a transportation bill by 3/4 of the members voting for it, Republican and Democrat, it'd be a good idea to take that bill up here. I think most Americans would agree that if the Democratic and Republican leadership in the other body reached an agreement on a way to keep the student loan rates low and not add to the deficit by paying for it, it would be a really good idea to bring the bill up here. The unfortunate thing for the House and for the country is that the only people who don't seem to be a part of that consensus are the Republican members of the House of Representatives. No matter if the Senate Republicans say it's okay, and the Senate Democrats say it's okay, and the President says it's okay, and the House Democrat says it's okay, more importantly, if the American people say it's okay, it somehow isn't usually okay with them. So what Mr. McGovern is saying is this: until we keep the student loan rates low, and until we pass a jobs bill to put people back to work on transportation, let's not take our 10th week of paid vacation this year. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. So voting no on the previous question says that let's get our work done before we go home and take the 10th week of vacation for the year. Vote no. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know about my colleagues across the aisle. It's not a paid vacation for me. I go home and spend time with my constituents and hear from them what's of concern. Maybe they're on vacation, but I know the people on our side of the aisle are not on vacation. They're working hard for the American people. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, can I inquire from the gentlelady how many more speakers she has on her side?
We're prepared to close when the gentleman from Massachusetts is prepared to close.
I'm prepared to close. May I ask how much time I have left, Mr. Speaker?
Gentleman from Massachusetts has 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. I yield myself the remaining time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, our job should be to help improve the quality of life for the citizens that we represent. We ought to be investing in our economy at this very difficult time. That's why we are urging the House Republicans to join with the Senate Republicans and the Senate Democrats and the House Democrats in bringing a highway bill to the floor so we can provide some certainty to our states, so there can be more investments in infrastructure, so there can be more jobs created. That would give the American people a little something to celebrate. We are urging my colleagues on the Republican side here in the House to join with us in making sure that interest rates on student loans don't double for a great number of young people in this country who are trying to get an education. My colleague from North Carolina would have us believe that it's no big deal. Well, it is a big deal. It's a big deal to those students and to their families. It is a big deal to those of us on this side of the aisle. And maybe that's one of the differences between the two parties. We believe that college education ought to be affordable and that no one should not go to college because they can't afford the education. So Mr. Speaker, I'm going to ask unanimous consent to insert the text of an amendment in the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question, which basically says that we're not going home. We're not leaving this place until we do our work. Because part of our job, I would say to my colleague from North Carolina, is not just going home and meeting with our constituents and marching in parades. Part of our job is to pass legislation that is important to the people we represent. This highway bill is important to putting people back to work. That we have dragged, that my friends on the other side have dragged their feet and dragged their feet and dragged their feet, I think is unconscionable. We are running out of time. We need to start doing the people's business here. And if that means that we have to stay through the weekend, we should stay through the weekend. If that means we have to stay through next week, we should stay through next week. But we ought to do something meaningful. Our job should not be about lowering the quality of life for people. And that is my problem with the appropriations process that my colleagues have pursued in this House. It is all about putting all the burden of balancing our budget on middle-income families and on those who least can afford it. Donald Trump is not asked to pay 1 penny more. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote no and defeat the previous question, and I urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, next week is 4th of July. We're going to be celebrating Independence Day. And I'd like to say I don't believe the job of the federal government is to provide things to citizens, but to preserve our liberty. And that's what next week should be reminding us of. Mr. Speaker, House Republicans are aware of the clear mandate the American people gave us. Our charge is to reduce the crushing debt that our country is currently carrying. According to the Senate Budget Committee, debt grew 4 times faster under President Obama than Clinton or Bush, with President Obama already having amassed more debt since taking office than did President Bush during his entire 2 terms in office. Today, the national debt is over $15 trillion, which amounts to nearly $48,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. It's clear that without a change in leadership in the White House and Senate, the legacy we are apt to leave our children and grandchildren will be a crushing debt burden and a weaker, less secure, and less prosperous nation. This is simply unacceptable. The federal government's current budget deficits are simply unsustainable. During these tough economic times, Americans' families are getting by on less, and the government should do the same. When the Democrat elites were in the majority, they pushed a job-killing agenda, starting with the $1 trillion failed stimulus package, followed by a massive job-killing tax hike in the form of cap-and-trade, then the job-killing Obamacare, all the while leaving our country with record debts and deficits as unemployment skyrocketed. Recognize the government's gotten too expensive. Republicans are here to stop the senseless Obama spending binge. That's why I urge my colleagues to support this rule and the underlying legislation. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
The gentlelady yields back. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question on HRES 697 will be followed by 5-minute votes on adoption of the resolution if requested. The motion to instruct on H.R. 4348, offered by the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer, and the motion to instruct on H.R. 4348, offered by the gentlewoman from Tennessee, Mrs. Black. This will be a 15-minute vote.
Guidelines for debate on the $103 billion spending bill for the Departments of Transportation and Housing and Urban Development. Debate on that spending bill is expected to last through tomorrow and possibly into Thursday. We spoke with a reporter for an overview on the annual spending bills. The House continues work this week on the annual spending bills that fund the federal government. John Shaw, a congressional correspondent for Market News International, which one is up next?
It will be the transportation HUD bill that will be up on the floor this week, and it will be the sixth spending bill that the House has taken up this year. There are 12 bills that fund the discretionary portion of the federal government. So the House is moving along actually pretty well. They should complete the sixth bill this week. The Senate, of course, is a different story. They are working hard in the Appropriations Committee. They've actually moved 9 of the bills through the Senate Appropriations Committee, but none of them have actually reached the floor of the Senate as of now.
You mentioned the Senate. What's the status in the Senate on those spending bills?
Well, it was interesting. The Majority Leader, Harry Reid, was asked today on Tuesday if when the Senate will start taking up the spending bills for the fiscal year that starts October 1st. And he sort of coyly said, he goes, well, I'd like to start taking them up in July. He said, but I'm not sure we can actually do it. And he was pressed a little bit. And he just said that these spending bills oftentimes become a vehicle for what he called political messaging, which is sort of a way of saying that these bills oftentimes get tied up in a lot of extraneous matters that are not even related to the spending bills. So the Senate is moving very slowly on this. The House is moving pretty quickly. And there's all sorts of complications, one of which is they're actually operating from different spending levels. The two chambers disagree on last year's debt ceiling agreement. So the Senate actually will be marking up or will be considering bills that in total are about $19 billion more than in the House side. So even if the two chambers were to finish up their bills, they would be using, in some sense, different numbers. But I think at this point, it seems likely that the House, over the course of the next month or two, will get most of their 12 bills done. The Senate is very likely to maybe get 1 or 2 done. So we're probably going to get into September before there's much movement on the bills. And I think there's a very, very good chance that there's going to be a need for at least one and probably several stopgap funding bills to keep the government funded after October 1.
You mentioned the difference in spending levels between the House bill and the Senate bills. Would you say it's in line with spending in the agreement between Congress and the White House, higher, lower?
Well, it's interesting because they dispute what the agreement allows for. The interpretation of the Senate is the agreement allows for $1.047 trillion in spending for discretionary programs. They think that number was actually in the debt ceiling agreement. The House Republican leaders have said that they acknowledge that number is in the agreement, but they say that's a ceiling and that actually they have the prerogative of spending below that amount. And as they were moving a budget resolution through the House chamber this spring, in part to appease some of their more conservative members, they ratcheted the number down about $19 billion. A lot of people think that the House is breaking the budget agreement. I think a lot of independent budget experts would say that the spirit of the agreement and even the letter of the agreement says that they should be putting together bills that total $1.047, but that's the lay of the land right now.
You said that the transportation spending bill is the 6th spending bill to come through the House. How many spending bills are there in total?
There are 12 that will fund the discretionary piece of the federal budget, which is only about a third of the budget. Much of the government is actually funded through entitlement programs such as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid that don't go through the annual appropriations process. So it's interesting, an increasingly small portion of the federal budget is actually funded through these 12 annual bills.
And what's the House Republican leadership's expectation for getting all 12 bills through the House?
Well, they'd like to, and they're hopeful, and of course they say that's one of the fundamental jobs of Congress is to pass spending bills. So I think they believe that it's something they should do and can do, and candidly I think they're believing, their thought is to get it passed through the House. They're worried, they're not worried really right now about resolving their differences with the Senate. I think there's a general view that come at the end of this year, there's going to be a very big, complex negotiation involving these funding bills, the expiration of the Bush-era tax cuts, the across-the-board spending cuts that have been mandated, as well as a debt ceiling agreement. So there's going to be so many big, complicated fiscal issues at the end of the year, and I think actually these spending bills are going to be part of that overall mix.
John Shaw is a congressional correspondent for Market News International. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It's Election Day in 6 states, where the National Journal writes the dominant stories are Senator Orrin Hatch's anticipated victory in Utah's GOP primary and Representative Charlie Rangel's toughest test yet in New York's 13th District Democratic race. Mr. Hatch will be an overwhelming favorite to win his party's nomination, and the article continues to say that Mr. Rangel is also confident about his prospects, saying today that he's not worried that a 2010 ruling by a congressional committee which found him guilty of 11 counts of ethics violations related to personal finances will affect his chances. So we'll be watching for those primary results tonight. Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney held a campaign event in Salem, Virginia today, talking about the Supreme Court decision on immigration and the economy. Here's part of what he said.
This is a busy week, by the way, for the Supreme Court. I think all their work highlights the leadership failures of our current president. You see, when he was running for office, he said he would make it his first priority in his first-year agenda to reform our immigration system and make it work for the American people and for those that want to come here legally. He did not do that. Why is it? He had a Democrat House, Democrat Senate, all the support he needed. He did nothing. Why did he fail to do that? And so the Supreme Court had to step in because states had to step in. States looking to find a way to solve the problems he didn't address, tried to address it in their own ways, and now the Supreme Court's looked at it, and what we're left with is a bit of a muddle. But what we know is the president failed to lead. He failed to do what he said he'd do. And so instead of focusing on immigration and, of course, on the big issue, which was the economy and getting the economy going, he instead focused on putting in place his health care reform called Obamacare. Now, as you know, the Supreme Court is going to be dealing with whether or not Obamacare is constitutional. If it's not, if Obamacare is not deemed constitutional, then the first 3.5 years of this president's term will have been wasted on something that has not helped the American people. If it is deemed to stand, then I'll tell you one thing. We're going to have a president, and I'm that one that's going to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to stop it on day one. What we're witnessing is a failure of the president's policies. He did not deal with immigration. With regards to Obamacare, he put that as a higher priority than our economy, and as a result, we have had 40 straight months with unemployment above 8%. The economy's not working. Immigration is not working. This president has not been working in the right way for the American people. It's time for that to change.
And you can see all of what Mitt Romney said today in Salem, Virginia, in our overnight programming on C-SPAN 2 and later on at cspan.org. President Obama is also on the road. He spoke at a couple of events in Atlanta this afternoon and is now in Miami, where he'll attend a small fundraiser with 30 people at a private residence, with tickets for that costing $40,000. The president then heads to the Fillmore at the Jackie Gleason Theater, where he'll deliver remarks at about 8:30 Eastern at a reception for 1,500 people, and singer Mark Anthony is performing at that event. A number of GOP senators, including Senators McCain, Chambliss, Cornyn, Graham, and Wicker, held a news conference today asking Attorney General Eric Holder to appoint a special counsel to investigate whether the White House is responsible for national security leaks. Among the concerns about the leaks are recent news reports on U.S. drone attacks in the Middle East. Here's that news conference.
Good morning. I'm joined by my colleagues, Senator Saxby Chambliss, who is the ranking Republican on the Intelligence Committee, Senator John Cornyn, who is obviously involved as member of the Armed Services Committee and the Judiciary Committee, and Senator Wicker, who is also a member of the Armed Services Committee. Senator Graham is unable to join us. I think it's important for us to recognize the gravity and the seriousness of this issue. According to Senator Feinstein, the chairperson of the Intelligence Committee, I quote her, "These disclosures have seriously interfered with ongoing intelligence programs and have put at jeopardy our intelligence capability to act in the future. Each disclosure puts American lives at risk, makes it more difficult to recruit assets, strains the trust of our partners, and threatens imminent and irreparable damage to our national security in the face of urgent and rapidly adapting threats worldwide." Those are the words of the chairperson of the Intelligence Committee. That is an indication of how serious this issue is. And I understand that immigration and health care and a number of other issues are getting the American people's attention. But unfortunately, apparently, these leaks go on and on and on. So in the New York Times, Mr. Sanger, in his book, says almost every single member of the President's national security team was generous enough to sit down and talk through their experiences more than once. He goes on to say, some of the sources in the recent publications specifically refused to be identified because what they were talking about related to classified or ongoing programs. In his book, which describes the administration's use of drones in Yemen, Newsweek journalist Daniel Kleidman writes, quote, "When I quote President Obama or other key characters, I do so only if that quote was relayed to me by a source who personally heard it." Earlier this month, the President of the United States said, and I quote him, "The notion that my White House would purposely release classified national security information is offensive. It's wrong, and people, I think, need to have a better sense of how I approach this office and the people around me approach this office." Well, let's see how the people around him approach the office. According to, again, David Sanger, almost every single member of the President's national security team was generous enough to sit down and talk through their experiences, more than once. Most were willing to place at least some comments on the record. As an example of how incredible, how bizarre this entire situation is one anecdote I'd like to quote. In his book, Mr. Sanger depicts a curious meeting that occurred in the fall of 2009 in Pittsburgh at the G20 Economic Summit. And this is Mr. Sanger's book. As often happens when the President travels, there was a dinner organized with a number of other reporters and several of Obama's political aides, including David Axelrod and Rahm Emanuel. The talk was mostly politics and the economic downturn. But just as coffee was being served, a senior official in the National Security Council tapped me on the shoulder. After dinner, he said, I should take the elevator to the floor of the hotel where the President had his suite. Quote, "We'll talk about Iran," he whispered. Obama was not back at the hotel when we gathered that evening outside his suite, but most of the rest of the national security staff was present and armed with the intelligence that had been collected over many years about Iran's secret site as they laid it out on a coffee table in the hotel suite. Via satellite photos, the United States had mapped the construction of the building, useful if ever had to hit it. It was clear from the details that the United States had interviewed scientists who had been inside the underground facility. We spent an hour reviewing the evidence. Well, maybe the President of the United States was not present at his own suite in Pittsburgh when obviously the notion that his White House would purposely release classified national information is offensive is contradicted by the facts. And to think that that two people appointed as prosecutors from Mr. Holder's office, overseen by Mr. Holder, is also offensive. We need a special counsel. We need someone who the American people can trust, and we need to stop the leaks that are endangering the lives of those men and women who are serving our country with valor and courage, and they deserve a lot better. And there are finally, throughout these these books, both of these books, and the other information that has been leaked, the latest which saying that the CIA was vetting weapons that may go into Syria, are always have, at the end of the day, one purpose, and that, or one effect, and that is to make the President of the United States look like a brave, strong leader on national security. This, what has taken place, I have never seen anything like in the many years I have been here. I've seen leaks, and I've seen things happen that endanger our national security, but on a continuous, ongoing, unrelenting basis that puts, in the words of Senator Feinstein, that puts American lives at risk is of the highest priority, and it requires the appointment of a special counsel. Senator Chambliss.
Thanks, Senator McCain, for continuing to lead this effort. I've now been involved in the intelligence community for in excess of 10 years. I've dealt with intelligence leaders who are partners of the United States in virtually every part of the world. And I can just tell you that our partners are very concerned about what's happening in Washington right now with respect to these leaks and the reaction of the administration to these leaks. We've never, even though this town is known for having leaks from time to time, we've never seen the number of leaks coming out of the intelligence community, nor have we seen the level of the leaks that are now being reported in virtually every paper in the country. It seems like almost on a daily basis, even though it may not be. But, you know, for the President of the United States to come out and say that it is offensive to him to think that his White House would intentionally leak classified information, frankly offends me to no end. What the President ought to be saying is that this is very damaging to the country, and we're going to do everything we can to get to the bottom of it, whether it involves my White House or wherever in the intelligence community. But for him to be politically offended by this makes no sense whatsoever from a national security perspective. Let me just quote some of the statements that appeared publicly in these articles and in a couple of books that are out there right now. First of all, President Obama is quoted from inside the Situation Room. Now, the Situation Room is located in the White House. You do not go in the Situation Room unless you have the highest classified rating. So somebody within that Situation Room who is associated with the National Security Council obviously is quoting the President. Secondly, Obama aides quoted as to what transpired in the Situation Room. Senior administration officials were quoted time and again in these articles. The National Security Advisor is quoted as talking about a covert action program. Now, we as members of the Intelligence Committee can't even confirm whether these programs exist, and yet you have the National Security Advisor talking about a covert action program. 36 current and former administration officials within the intelligence community were interviewed, according to one of the articles. David Axelrod, who is not a part of the national security team, was apparently in the Situation Room on a number of occasions. This is a political advisor to the President. And then lastly, the Deputy National Security Advisor, John Brennan, goes on Good Morning America, and he's quoted as saying, "We had the device," talking about the bomber, "we had the device under control." Folks, this is all classified information, and yet we have folks in the White House going on TV and talking about it. Now, while these are part of news stories, these are direct accusations towards the White House with respect to the source of the leak. Some of them are pretty direct, some of them are indirect. Now, we all know that this town is about politics, but this is not about Republicans pointing the finger at the White House. These are news reporters, just like you folks in this room, very professional, but out to get a story that's quoting White House officials on disclosure of classified information. Now, I have no question about the competence, the integrity, or the capability of the two U.S. attorneys who have been nominated now by the Attorney General to investigate, and this is important, to investigate only two of the supposed leaks. One, the Iran issue on the interruption of their gaining nuclear capability, and secondly, the issue of the underwear bomber. There are other leaks in addition to that, and if you notice what DNI Clapper said yesterday, is that he has asked his IG to investigate those scenarios or those leaks that the Attorney General is not investigating. Now, do we really think, in spite of the capability of these two U.S. attorneys, that when you have somebody who is appointed by the administration, are they really going to be unbiased in their investigation of the administration that appointed them? One of these individuals apparently worked on the Obama campaign, was involved in the vetting of the vice president's selection. So they are not, he was not just a casual volunteer in the campaign. He obviously was a pretty important member of that campaign team. You know, I was told by Attorney General Holder when he called me Friday 2 weeks ago to say that he was going to name these two U.S. attorneys to do the investigation, that if during the course of this a conflict of interest developed, then he would consider the appointment of a special counsel. Well, guess what? The more we find out about the folks that are going to be doing the investigation, the more common sense determination is that there is a conflict of interest today. And because that conflict of interest exists, that a special counsel should be appointed. Senator Cornyn.
I agree with Senator McCain and Senator Chambliss that a special counsel should be appointed for the simple reason that this administration cannot be trusted to investigate itself. And since 1999, when the independent counsel statute expired, the special counsel provision has been created. And unfortunately, as currently written, the special counsel, these two U.S. attorneys, political appointees of the Obama administration, are tasked with doing the investigation and reporting to guess who? To Attorney General Eric Holder, who has not demonstrated any sort of independence on his behalf as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States. I won't go into the long litany of those, but many of them are in the news this week and have been since the administration started. And let me just call to your attention the double standard under which our Democratic friends operated during the time that President Bush was in the White House. During the Valerie Plame affair, Patrick Fitzgerald insisted upon a letter from James Comey, acting Attorney General, after Attorney General Ashcroft recused, delegating all of the investigative authority of the Department of Justice to the special counsel, and declined to exercise any sort of supervisory control over Mr. Fitzgerald, the special counsel. So that was an independent investigation. This is not. And if, in fact, Attorney General Holder and the administration continue to promote this pretense of independent investigation, my hope is that Congress will take up the responsibility to do what is constitutionally authorized and obligated to do, and that is to investigate this matter ourselves. I've talked specifically to Senator Collins and Senator Lieberman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee that would have jurisdiction over some, if not a substantial portion of this. And my hope is that we will have a truly independent investigation, because you cannot investigate yourselves and claim you have no conflict of interest, which the administration and Attorney General Holder are claiming presently. Senator Wicker.
Where's the outrage in this administration? Where is there any indication that within the Obama administration officials are outraged at the criminal leaks of classified information that put our agents and our friends at risk? Here is what has been disclosed obviously by members of the administration, classified details of the Navy SEALs raid to kill Osama bin Laden, missions in Pakistan. A Yemeni double agent has been outed and is of no use to us in the future. The Predator drone protocols, the cyber war involving Iraq, and overt operations in Africa. All of these sensitive pieces of administration have been spread out in a book by Mr. Sanger, and we have yet to hear any outrage from the President of the United States. Any other administration, in my memory, Democrat or Republican, would have been absolutely apoplectic, looking for the culprits, trying to find out who were the people who had actually committed these criminal leaks. Instead, the President is offended that someone would suggest such a thing. And frankly, members of the administration are sort of smugly happy that information has come forward that appears to make the President seem tough. As Peggy Noonan said last week, national security doesn't exist to help presidents win elections. It's not a plaything or a tool to advance one's prospects. And yet this administration, it seems, is more interested in advancing the prospects of the President's re-election than being outraged about criminal leaks. This is a bipartisan concern.
The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
on that I ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favor